Hi everybody, and welcome to Outdoor Ed with Mary. The theme of this week's video will be the answers to the questions that you submitted for last week's Eco Challenge. Before I start, I'd like to give a quick shout out to a few students who submitted topic ideas and questions that I'm just not going to be able to get to today. Like Stella from the River Otters, who wanted to learn about Native American fabric dyes. Rylan from the Squirrels, who wants to learn more about bears. Madeline from the Hawks, who wants to learn more about trees, and Ella from the Turtles, who had a great question about fog. Your questions were just too good for me to fit a short answer in one of these videos today, so I'll be revisiting these questions and topics in future videos. Our first question comes from Logan of the Fireflies, who wants to know, how big is a sunflower seed? This is a great question, Logan, and there are a couple different ways to answer it. First, let's agree to measure the full sunflower seed, with the hull still attached, like the picture on the right. On SowTrueSeed's website, they say that there are an average of 25 seeds per gram in their packet of sunflower seeds. That means a single seed is just 1/25 or 0.04 grams. It would take 25 sunflower seeds to weigh as much as a single paper clip. But how long is a single sunflower seed? Well, the average seems to be about 22 millimeters. That's roughly the size of a nickel. That means you'd need over 50 sunflowers stacked up to reach the height of the average second grader. It's hard to believe that something so small could grow up to be a big, beautiful sunflower. Speaking of flowers, a friend from the Great Blue Herons wants to know, how much pollen can a bee spread in one day? The answer to this question really depends on the type of flowers the bee is visiting, but here's what we do know. Each bee can travel to about 500 flowers in one day. That seems like a big number, and it is, but it takes a hive 2 million flowers to make 1 pound of honey. So next time you see a bee visiting a flower near you, make sure you tell them, thanks for the hard work. Speaking of honeybees, one of our honeybees, Colin, submitted a question about hummingbirds feeding on jewelweed, and he sent in this picture. He wanted to know if I've ever seen a hummingbird feeding on jewelweed nectar. And Colin, I have to tell you, I haven't, but it doesn't surprise me because hummingbirds are excellent pollinators. Thanks for sharing this cool picture with us. And speaking of amazing flyers, Henry from the Black Bears wants to know, how do insects fly? Whew, this is a hard question, Henry, and there's a more than one part answer, so I'll do my best. There are two different types of insect flight, direct flight and indirect flight. There are only two families of insects that still fly using direct flight, dragonflies and mayflies, and it looks something like this. Bugs who use direct flight flex two sets of muscles, one set to draw their wings down and another set to draw the wings back up. That flapping motion creates lift, which brings the bug up into the air. This type of flight takes a lot of energy, but it allows these bugs to fly very accurately, which helps them catch prey. All other flying insects fly using a method called indirect flight. The easiest way to explain this method is to think of it as rowing a canoe with two paddles. The way you move the oars through the water, that's how the insects move their wings through the air. With this method, insects can flap their wings much faster than with direct flight, which means that tiny insects with tiny wings can still generate enough lift to fly. This method also conserves energy, so it's good for insects who have to do lots and lots of long flights, maybe sipping at lots of different flowers for nectar. Thanks for that challenging question, Henry. I learned a lot while looking up the answer. Our next question comes from Ridge of the Swallowtail class, who wants to know, what can praying mantises do? Well, for starters, they can turn their head 180 degrees. That would be like if you were able to turn your head all the way around so it was facing straight behind you. Go ahead and try it. Pretty tricky, huh? They're also able to strike their prey in just 70 milliseconds. That means it could strike 4 times in just one blink of a human eye. Moving on from insects to arachnids, our next question comes from Oliver of the Great Blue Herons, who wants to know, what's up with funnel spiders? Are they dangerous? Well, I've got good news for you, Oliver. Although funnel weaving spiders might be a little creepy, there are no venomous funnel weavers in North Carolina. In fact, there are only 2 species of spider in our state that can potentially hurt humans: the black widow and the brown recluse. The spider who most likely built the funnel-shaped web that you sent in your picture here, Oliver, is what we would call a grass spider. And the way their funnel-shaped webs work is actually really cool. Unlike many other spider webs, funnel webs are not sticky. The spider hides in the back of the funnel like a little cave, and when prey insects step onto the web, it sends a vibration all the way down to the spider, who then runs out and grabs its prey. Moving on from spiders to flowers, Gabriel would like to know, why is this flower blooming so late? Well, just from what I can tell in the photo, this looks like a member of the mallow family, possibly a hibiscus, and these flowers bloom late summer into fall, so it's not very unusual to see this plant flowering right now. Our next question comes from Emmy of the Turtles Home crew, who wants to know, why is this tomato not turning red? Well, it's hard to say about one specific tomato, Emmy, but what we do know is that in order for tomatoes to ripen, they need temperatures between 70 and 75 degrees Fahrenheit. This means that it's likely your garden was just a little bit too warm or a little bit too cold for that tomato. Give the tomato a little squeeze, and as long as it's not rock hard, you can actually pick it and then bring it indoors, where we usually keep the air between 70 and 75 degrees, and it can actually finish ripening indoors and then be ready to eat. Litzy from the Otters class wants to know, what is giving me terrible allergies this time of year? And Litzy, I can almost guarantee you that what is giving you trouble is this plant right here. This is called ragweed. I took this video on my driveway because ragweed is so common and it grows all over the place. It's quite tall and it has these sort of spindly flower tops. And these flowers produce pollen that's carried by the wind. It's carried through the air. So that is most likely what's giving you that issue. About 20% of Americans are actually allergic to ragweed. And the absolute peak of ragweed season is right now, so it should only be getting better and easier from here on out. Before I go to our last question, it's time for this week's Eco Challenge. Your challenge is to go outside and look for 2 things: flowers and flying insects. Believe it or not, next Tuesday is actually the first day of fall. So while our yards and gardens are still full of flying insects and flowers, make sure you take some time to go out, get the sun on your face, and really enjoy those last moments of summer. Our last question comes from Adrian, who wants to know, where can I find puffball mushrooms? And the answer is pretty much all over the place. Unlike other mushrooms that only grow on certain trees or in certain areas, puffball mushrooms have so many spores that travel so far that they can wind up growing in tons of places. You can find them in grass and mulch, in the woods, basically everywhere around right now. This is the height of puffball season. Late summer to early fall is the best time to find puffballs. So keep your eyes on the ground and I'm sure you'll find some. Thanks so much to everyone who submitted questions and ideas, and I'll see you next week. Bye-bye!